Hello, everyone, and welcome to This Week in Net. This is our final episode of 2024, so happy holidays and end of the year for those who are celebrating. Today, we're reflecting on the year, but focusing more on making predictions about 2025. I'm your host, João Tomé, based in Lisbon, Portugal, a very cold today and rainy Lisbon, Portugal. And with me, I have returning to the program, our CDO, John Graham-Cumming. Hello, John. How are you?
Hello. I'm inside, staying out of the rain. And funnily enough, just as you started this, the rain started really beating down on my roof. So I don't know if anybody can hear it, but I'm just underneath the roof and it is hammering down. So
actually, I don't think we can hear the microphone. Are
good.
So a very busy year, and another AI year in a sense, with a lot of AI things. Actually, the week we were recording, you were on João Finance talking about many things, and AI, of course, was included on that regard.
Yep, absolutely. They wanted to chat about what's happening with AI because I think everybody wants to know the answer to that. I guess they thought I knew the answer, so they asked me.
Did you know?
I mean, you know, we can talk about that, right? We're going to talk about predictions for
exactly
next year, and AI is it's definitely not going away. Let's put it that way. So there's going to be more AI things.
For sure. Actually, 2024 marked Cloudflare's 14th birthday, and we also had a great birthday week in late September with a lot of announcements, cool things, with a mission in mind to help build a better internet. And you did 13 years at Cloudflare in December.
I did 13 years in December. It's been a while. Yes,
it's been a while.
Yes. It was a very small company when I joined, and now it's no longer a very small company, although it's still small by some, measures. So, if you think about, we've still got a lot of growth to do. There's a lot of things that we're going to be doing over the next few years. So yeah, lots more to do, even though it seems big to me.
True. And big to me too. But on that regard, over the years, and I actually first found a Matthew Prince, our CEO, blog post from 2011, actually, doing some predictions. There's a few from you, actually, a few years after that, doing predictions for the incoming year, in a sense. How easy it is, or actually how difficult it is to do predictions for the incoming year, and how relevant it is, even.
So I think one of the problems with predictions is that they end up being either kind of linear with what has happened before. So you can kind of say, this trend looks like it will continue. And those are not so interesting. What you really want is the big surprise ones, right? So you want to be able to say, next year, there's going to be an artificial general intelligence, or next year aliens are going to visit the planet, or something like that, because that would get people excited or scared or whatever. Both of those. So it's kind of like you're stuck between somewhat tedious and things that, well, maybe they're very, very hard to predict. I mean, just look at what's happened in Syria very recently, where, this sudden overthrowing of the government there. If you'd sat back and said last year, do we think that's going to happen? You probably would have said no, but it did. And so it's hard to predict those things. But we'll give it a go. We'll give it a go for the end of the year.
Actually, on that note, I was hearing a podcast, an episode that was like 3 days ago, and it was mentioning, like a real expert on Syria, mentioning that overthrowing the government was not a possibility in the future. And when I was hearing the podcast, the government was already being dethroned. So things really change quickly. When they change, they change quickly.
And on that front, I was like, one of the things I did was I went to Cloudflare Radar to look to see, what was the effect on internet traffic in Syria? Because it could have gone like 2 different ways in my mind. It could have been blackout, right? Or it could have been an incredible increase in internet use because maybe people would be communicating more freely, as you've seen sometimes in other situations. Neither of those things happened, right? It was show how good I am at predicting it, right? We saw a sort of a bit of a drop for a few days. But what's interesting, I think, in that story is that there wasn't a blackout. And I think that indicates that the government of Syria fell so fast that they didn't even get around to saying, well, maybe if we cut off the internet, we'll be able to get this thing under control.
True. Actually, why not just show folks the internet perspective here? One of the things that I found interesting, and we did some tweets about this a few days before the government was overthrown, internet dropped a lot. And then it picked up already this week. So with the changes being made, it was on Sunday, if I'm not mistaken. So there was definitely a drop for a few days, and then it picked up again.
It picked up again, right? So it's
Exactly.
it was interesting. And many years ago, we looked at an internet outage in Syria. You can probably find it on the Cloudflare blog somewhere way back. Which at the time the Syrian government blamed on a cable cut, but which we know wasn't true because Syria has multiple cables in different locations because of its geographical location, and they all went down simultaneously. So that was a sort of slightly suspicious cable cut, and clearly wasn't. It was clearly government mandated. This time, none of that happened.
Is this one how Syria turned off the internet?
That's right. That's right. And at the time,
2012.
they were saying that it was caused by a cable cut. But if you look at Syria's connectivity, because they have multiple land borders, they actually have multiple cables across those land borders, and it was suspiciously simultaneous. So,
oh well, a lot going on. On the predictions note, before we go into those types of predictions, why not also try to review a bit of what was the year for Cloudflare in very specific terms? We launched new tools. New improvements. Developers had a lot of new tools to play with, in a sense, and build stuff with workers. More automation in the DDoS front. AI audit that had this week we were recording, had a very important update with a button where content creators can block the crawling of their content, right? So in a nutshell, how can we highlight some things of 2024 for Cloudflare and products?
Wow, I mean that's a big question. As ever, Cloudflare is super innovative. We have the weeks where we put stuff out, and we're definitely not slowing down. There's my prediction for 2025. There'll be more stuff from Cloudflare. A couple of things I think though. We launched a bunch of stuff around AI control. Because what I think a lot of our customers are seeing, the ones who are managing corporate networks, they want to get control on over AI tools, who's using them, which ones are allowed. Also, the customers who are getting scraped by the AI scrapers, they want to make sure they've got control of that. So we launched a bunch of tools around AI. That was really important. We also launched, of course, stuff around workers AI. We're constantly bringing out the latest llama models on the platform, and that has become a really powerful platform. And around this end of year period, you're going to see applications built on the Cloudflare platform hit the public consciousness with some pretty major brands involved. So that's coming up pretty soon. But there's a lot of other stuff. I mean, like we talked about other things. I mean, the other area which I think has a long bet that Cloudflare worked on was AI was one of them, right? We had our NVIDIA partnership many years ago. Is quantum resistant encryption, and just the other day, Google announced a new quantum computing chip called Willow. We've spent about the last 5 or 6 years working with standards bodies, with other partners on quantum resistant encryption, and there's a lovely graph on Radar showing the use of quantum resistant encryption in the real world has really spiked up this year. And that's because we made it available to everybody and Google Chrome implemented it in the browser. And so a lot of connections are now quantum resistant if they're coming to Cloudflare properties.
Makes sense. It was a clear increase in terms of a percentage.
Yes, it's one of those things like that, exactly, right? It spikes up.
It is. And those are one of the topics that a tech company, as Cloudflare, must be thinking of that before it goes to the news cycle, in a sense. So it's now on the news cycle. There are folks worried, hey, what happens when quantum computers can decrypt what is what is in the internet in a sense, but there are already things in place for a few years that are gaining momentum to try to avoid that potential in the future.
Well, we know how to avoid it, right? We have the algorithms, we now have the standards, and we now have the implementation. And Cloudflare has been involved at all steps of the way to make sure that was, part of what we do. And some years ago, we announced that post-quantum cryptography would be included in all of our product plans. So no matter whether you're a free or a paid customer of Cloudflare, no matter how much you use of Cloudflare, post-quantum cryptography is just part of what we do because it's essential for the future of the internet. And, we have our mission, help build a better internet. This is part of it.
Exactly. Here's a sum up already in December, reaching almost 30% of HTTPS request traffic being post-quantum encrypted. And as you mentioned, it was between March and April that things started to change clearly.
That's right. As Google Chrome started to ramp up the availability in the browser, we had worked with Google over the years to make sure these algorithms were suitable for use. We've done implementations, and we were ready for them, and here we are. So yes, a lot of connections are using that coming to Cloudflare, and of course, the rest of the industry needs to catch up and have the same algorithms available.
For sure. While we're sharing a screen, this is a 2014 31st of December 2014. So you were working the day before New Year's Eve. It's you. Cloudflare in 2014,
yes.
Bigger, faster, and secure. In this case,
I kind of made up a word there. I'm not sure secure is really a word. So I was playing with English.
I'm a Portuguese, so for me, new words make sense.
How would you say secure in Portuguese? Is mais seguro?
Yes.
Mais seguro. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Mais seguro. Exactly.
There we go.
We don't have like a real specific word for.
You say it better than me. Your accent's better than mine.
I'm Portuguese, so I have years of advantage. There was a lot in terms of what was Cloudflare at the time. Also, massive DDoS attacks. Very small compared to this day and age type of DDoS attacks. The expansion of data centers all around, and at the time, Heartbleed challenge. So it was a different internet in a sense at the time. Although there are things that are pretty much the same. It was the year we introduced Project Galileo, actually, giving services.
10 years ago now, we did the 10-year celebration. You were very involved in that year.
Exactly. And also keyless SSL, also an important thing at the time.
SSL, very important. People to keep control of their SSL private keys. We had shell shock. My goodness, that was a long time ago. I remember shell shock very well. Shell shock's actually a funny one. We decided it's one of the vulnerabilities that we decided was so bad that we would roll out protection for all our customers, including the free customers who typically don't get the web application firewall. And we've done that for a few other things. We did it for Log4j as well. We rolled out some basic protection for everybody. And shell shock was actually one where I remember very clearly hard coding the shell shock pattern into our Lua code. And I wonder if it's still there. Maybe it is.
Maybe it is. A lot of changes in 10 years. So why not start also to project what's coming in 2025? In terms of the year ahead, what are the changes that we did in 2024 that you think could be really important for what's coming? Potentially they were not as important now that they were launched, but potentially they will be in 2025.
Well, I mean, earlier on, I mentioned AGI and an alien invasion, right? So those are my two big predictions for 2025, right? There'll be two sorts of non-human intelligence on Earth. So apart from that, bringing it back to actually sensible predictions, I think there are things that we've done on our developer platform that put us in a position where you're going to see breakout applications built on the platform. So whether it's using AI or not, the Workers platform has reached, it's been around for a long time now, right? This is not new, the Workers platform, but we have built
17, something like that.
Go back and find the blog post.
Oh, well.
Kenton's wonderful description of what it was, but that platform has grown to a point where there are many applications built on top of it. people are using workers an incredible amount without realizing that we're executing the code for them in our data centers around the world. And I think that you're just going to see some major applications get built on workers and on workers AI because the platform has reached a level of depth and with the right developer advocates and examples. And it's just going to be that's going to be the one in 2025 that I think we'll hear a lot more about than we've been hearing about in the past.
And it's 2017. I was correct.
There you go. So 7 years since we actually put in place a developer platform, and so many announcements since then.
Exactly. It's at the time was starting small, but it's clearly today something really big with I think over 2 million developers are building with Cloudflare, which is a lot. And as you mentioned, potentially like big companies will start rising in terms.
Yeah, big companies and also small companies that scale. Because the thing that workers lets you do, workers and workers AI, is it lets you scale something. So you can build a small version and get a big version for free, basically. So I think that's really the big advantage. And you're going to see some companies do sudden scale ups. If you think about how fast OpenAI scaled, that shows you the potential of a viral application that people want to use. And, Cloudflare can help make applications grow very, very rapidly.
On that note, this is something that Sam Altman has talked about, not only about AGI that is coming potentially, and what would that mean, but also the first billion company, unicorn company with one person could be just around the corner. So these types of tools, not only AI driven, but workers driven, could make sense of there's less people that can do a lot of things in one company, kind of type of thing.
Yeah, but by the way, that's also the history of technology in many ways. So, like if you remember back a few years, 15 years, something like that, you heard stories about individual developers who made personally a lot of money with a mobile app, for example. And if you go back further than that, when the web came along, you heard about small teams achieving a lot because they could reach a very large market. So the AI thing is just another step up in this. And so, yeah, I agree with Sam Altman that we're going to see some very small teams use the leverage that AI gives them to do something really fascinating and large. And so, yeah, whether it's in 2025 or 2026, we'll see, but there's definitely coming. The other thing if we're talking about AI is that we're actually going to talk less about AI relative to how much we use AI. And the reason for that is we're going to be using AI without realizing it. And so the example I love to give people is that on your phone, you can probably go into your photo library and you can probably search by something like cat or man or house or etc. That's an example of machine learning or AI embedded into something that you don't think about. You just think, oh yeah, I can do that. That's a feature. And so you won't go around saying, oh, I'm using this AI in my Photos app. You'll just say, well, my Photos app does that. And we're going to see that across the board as AI gets embedded into things little by little without us really thinking about it. We're just going to think about it as the way computers work. A bit like, if you remember, when Google Mail came along, one of the killer features of Google Mail was search. It didn't matter, previously people were, I remember really well in Microsoft Outlook, for example, making folders and trying to categorize everything so I could find mail again. Google Mail just said, well, forget about that. Just search your mail. I think AI is going to be a bit like that. It's just going to be, oh yeah, well, obviously my system knows how to read my handwriting because that's just normal. Computers do that.
True. And it was a good search. So making it good and AI will help with efficiency for sure, even on the search level. It makes a world of difference. Finding what you're searching.
Part of the reason next year is interesting is I think there's been a lot of, in some ways, overhyped expectations about what AI is going to do in 2024 as people try to apply it to particular problems. It's not an instantaneous solution, right? You need to spend some time specializing it, training it, learning how to use the AI. So I think it's now that we're going to start to see these applications arrive, and they will just be part of our daily lives, whether it's on internet or on your phone. AI is just going to be, oh yes, computers do that. They have some, intelligence built into them.
Exactly. Apple has announced Apple Intelligence by phases, so it will be incremental in a sense. Actually, in December, OpenAI started to do deployment every day of new things. So additions, one of the latest one was a better integration with Apple types of, with Siri in a sense. So there's much more integration where folks that don't know anything about AI, as you were mentioning, are just seeing improvements in what they can achieve, and not necessarily the perspective of, oh, this is a new AI tool. It's just improvements all around.
Now, an interesting question is, you and I are sitting here in Europe talking about these things that people are going to see. And that's an interesting question on all of this AI stuff is, when will we see it? Because, what you are seeing with some US AI companies is that they are delaying the release of their AI products in Europe. So you saw that with Sora from OpenAI, Apple Intelligence. My understanding is it's not until April of next year that we're going to see it in Europe.
Yes, it's not available.
So, there is a gap in our ability to use some of these AI products. So when we talk about us, we have to bear in mind that you and I may be delayed in seeing these things, and other parts of the world may see them ahead of us.
True. On that note, not only on the AI front, on the internet front, there's a lot of talk. This was the year of elections. I just did an episode with Alyssa Starzak and Jocelyn from our policy team, all about elections in 2024, but also predicting a bit on what's coming in 2025 in terms of policy. A lot of changes because there's new governments in town, all in all sorts of countries. On the technology side, is that something that maybe it's a opportunity because there's a lot of changes, and other things that worry you a bit on the regulation, more technology side perspective of 2025?
Well, I mean, obviously things with regulation tend to play out over a long period. So we don't really know what the effect of, European regulation will be on innovation, for example. To what extent are people in Europe held back by not being able to get access to certain AI products? It's difficult for us to know the answer to that. I think it is a bit unfortunate, because what has made technology take off over, I think, of the last 20 years has been the ability for people to access technology. And so, computers got significantly cheaper. There was the open source movement, which made, availability of, software to everybody. Programmers could look at other people's code and modify it, and you saw many great innovations. So we're going to see, and it's going to be interesting to see how the European AI companies respond, and whether this, creates sort of an environment in which they flourish, or whether, creating a barrier means that, local people in Europe have less experience with this stuff, and that has some knock-on effect. I'm not sure what the answer is. What I think is that restricting access to knowledge is a problem, and we need to make sure we're not doing that.
Makes sense. Let's see how it plays out. On that note, and we were talking about AI access, there's AI needs in terms of technology, in terms of data centers. We mentioned several times during this year in the blog and elsewhere. For example, we just around birthday week announced Gen 12, the 12th generation of hardware that we have in our data centers, with the CPU level, but the GPUs that AI definitely needs also there. What is your prediction on AI needs on that more hardware, AI inference, latency, being quick to have the information you need from AI?
Well, as I was saying, AI is going to be a bit everywhere, and you're not going to realize where it is. So some of that's going to be on your phone. Like, for example, if you look at an Apple device, it has a dedicated processor for doing AI tasks. So you're going to see things there. You're going to see these big data centers where people are doing training. I think a lot of the focus tends to be on them. Meta is building a gigawatt data center or whatever, right? That
and nuclear is now also being used. Google, Meta, they're trying it.
They're trying to get power, right? And so, yes, absolutely. And so, people concentrate on that, but I think the real thing is this sort of distributed nature of AI. So the AI chip that's in your phone, the AI cards or chips that are on our network everywhere in the world. I think it's 120 cities now where we have GPUs. And so it's going to be a bit everywhere. I'm very hopeful in 2025, we see an emergence of some really credible rivals to NVIDIA, particularly for inference. As it is, we've looked at lots and lots of companies for chips that are non-NVIDIA because we're interested in, having a variety in our network. We've done that for CPUs in the past, right? We have Intel, and we have AMD, and we have some ARM as well. And so we'll do the same thing with GPUs because we're running a variety of different workloads, of different sizes. And so we'll want a variety. So I'm hopeful in 2025, we see some really good examples of those kind of processors become available. You've seen some major companies, and Amazon has their Trainium chips, and Google has their own chips as well. Hopefully some of these things become more widely available, whether it's for them or from a startup. But I think there's room here for improvement. There's room for low power chips. There's room for chips with a large amount of memory because of the size of the models. So we're still in a very, very active phase of innovation around how models get executed on what hardware, what the algorithms should look like, all of the work around quantization. So I think that, yes, there's a focus on, nuclear power stations powering gigawatt data centers. Makes sense. Good news story. I suspect the real news story will be about, over a longer term, about how we made this stuff faster, more power efficient, more memory efficient, more compact. And that will lead to an explosion of uses of AI everywhere.
Makes sense. You don't predict difficulties on that note regarding access in 2025 on too much people trying to use something that is not clearly available in terms of the power? Do you think there's resilience there?
I think that the fact that people want to push AI close to the device and on device gives you an incredible ability to distribute the actual inference across the world, and that distributes the load required, right? I also think the fact that you have Meta, who've really pushed out their open source model Llama, which is essentially becoming the de facto standard for building anything else. There are other open source models, but Llama has really taken over. Means that you don't have to have hundreds of companies building these foundational models. You can take these open source models and build on top of them, and so that takes some of the pressure off the training side of things. But nevertheless, there's power requirements now, and that will play out over the next 2 or 3 years.
You're mentioning different players in the GPU space, and we were talking about year in review. Lisa Su, the CEO of AMD, was named in December Times CEO of the Year, which was interesting in a sense that it was not NVIDIA specific, it was actually AMD on that regard.
Well, I'm not sure that, Jensen, that NVIDIA can be CEO of the Year every year.
That's true.
I mean, NVIDIA is growing.
Choose someone else.
I mean, NVIDIA is growing at an incredible rate, and continues to do so. But of course, AMD is doing a lot of interesting things, and we work very closely with them. We use their CPUs extensively, and we look at their GPU offerings as well.
Well, another perspective that potentially you can try to predict is what for you is that thing that most people don't talk about AI that you think could be really relevant in the next year? in making a change? You already mentioned incremental increases that people don't realize, but what is that thing about AI models potentially, or even what you can build with it that most people don't realize?
For me, the big thing is the intersection between AI and privacy. I think there's it would be tremendously valuable if some AI thing knew everything about my life, because I could ask it a question. I could get it to book something. I could say something, that restaurant I went to the week before last, the one with the, it's near Santos in Lisbon. And can you book that one again? And it could go figure that out if it knew everything about my life, right? It could look in my calendar, it could look at my email, or, wait, have I got any packages that haven't been delivered and I've lost track of, because it's Christmas and I've ordered a few things. Something could go, like some AI could go do that. The problem is I'm unwilling to give some third-party access to all of that stuff. It's very private. And so the interesting question will be whether there are local AI models that you run on your own computer or your own phone that guarantee that data doesn't leave. And that would unlock something pretty exciting. And that's kind of what Apple is trying to do, right, with Apple Intelligence. That's why they have been cautious about what they've released, and also why they've spent so much time on the privacy aspects of it, because they are aware that, your life is on your phone. So I think the intersection of AI and privacy is really significant and not talked about enough.
Makes sense. And on that regard, Apple actually released their vision of what's coming in future years, those types of interconnected perspectives. They're not releasing everything all at once. They're doing it step by step.
No,
and in Europe, we don't have anything almost. So.
In Europe, we don't have it right now. But let's imagine what we've read about in the press, because we can't actually try it ourselves. I think what Apple is doing is what they do in general, which is they want to release something that is a working product that a very large number of people can use, right? If you think about the size of Apple's user base. So they're going to spend time getting it right for that large audience. And that's why we're seeing what they've released so far. And I think it will be interesting to see how it plays out. So Apple may not be the bleeding edge of AI, but they'll be the deeply integrated one.
Regarding attacks, we already mentioned DDoS attacks. So we had a blog post about the evolution of 10 years of DDoS attacks. And there's other types of attacks, vulnerabilities, as Log4j you mentioned, that is still 3 years since it was released or announced. It's still this year, from our year in review, the main one vulnerability used in terms of types of access, in a sense. What is the attacks perspective that you see for 2025? And how is AI enabling what?
So the AI enablement thing is kind of interesting, right? Because I think the biggest thing we see is it enabling phishing, where then just people are writing better phishing emails. And
the automation, right? The machine learning automation perspective.
Yeah, I think that's probably that's going to continue to be a thing. It doesn't seem like AI is getting very good at hacking anything. I went to a very interesting talk in Switzerland a few months ago about a company which is programming an AI to do capture the flag competitions. And it's getting pretty good at them, but it's still not at the level of a good hacker. So I think it's a way off before AI starts, hacking for us. We're still going to have to sit at keyboards and spend long hours doing that. But yes, AI is part of the mix, particularly helping social engineer things. And so I think we'll see more of that. And we're going to see more of the rest of the usual stuff, right? Look at that DDoS post we did about the evolution of DDoS. I mean, DDoS has not gone away. You saw it 10 years ago in that blog post you were mentioning, and we're going to continue to see DDoS just grow, over time, just like it gets bigger and bigger. And why does it get bigger and bigger? Because the internet gets bigger and bigger. There are more machines to hack, more bandwidth available. People build botnets, and they can throw more bits per second at you.
Makes sense. Actually, the blog post you're mentioning is this one, Bigger and Badder, how DDoS attack sizes have evolved over the last decade. And it's quite the evolution. As we mentioned often, it's a easy way for attackers to do attacks. Sometimes it's with other vectors of try to access. They use this one and others, but typically this is a very much used one for sure. And there's this perspective in terms of increase. Oh well, actually it's 5.6 terabytes per second attack in October that we saw.
Terabits, it must be terabits.
Terabits, yeah. And it was 309 gigabits per second in 2013.
So there you go. So you just do a linear prediction.
Exactly.
So, yeah, I mean, these sizes get bigger as the internet grows. As you were saying in the radar report, the internet's grown by about 17% this year in terms of requests, and we've seen like 20% growth year on year on the internet. And so, the internet's just growing, and
exactly.
Bigger internet, bigger attacks.
There's over the years, IoT, Internet of Things perspective, and healthcare, and very specific industries that has over the years picking up, and attacks on those are known and coming, and there's also a wider perspective of adoption in terms of zero trust architecture for companies.
Yeah.
What's your prediction on those two notes? Zero trust architecture, adoption and use, and be secure with that.
Zero trust is just the way things are going. We already do, all of us do zero trust all the time. We just get our phone out, we get our laptop out, we connect to some network, and we log into services, and we are authenticated by that service. Zero trust is the corporate version of that world that everyone's already living in, where companies can control access to their internal resources. That's an architecture that's here. It's still not widespread. I mean, this is still a growing world, so there's going to be more of it. Eventually companies that aren't doing it will realize how much it costs to maintain a corporate network with all the firewalls and all this kind of stuff, and how inflexible it is. So I think that Cloudflare's zero trust connectivity cloud approach is how everything is going to be architected in the future. But for large companies, it takes time. And so there'll just be more of it over next year and the year after and the year after.
And on the IoT space, do you expect any changes, expansions on that regard?
Well, I think we have got past the internet toaster madness, happily.
People putting their toaster as a smart toaster.
A smart toaster with a display. I mean, I think that there was a mania for making everything smart at some point. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of people like things to not be smart because they just kind of work. Speaking as someone who has a home automation system, sometimes I wish I had copper cables with actual 240 volts flying through them. Like I just go, it's on or it's off. Because sometimes the smart can be painful. And so I think that the IoT devices that are out there are, things like smart cameras and DVRs, weather stations, personal devices for doing health monitoring. I mean, these things are just going to be part of how we do stuff. Those are internet connected. But hopefully I really hope the internet toaster has died a death.
I agree. I'm not a fan. But I remember a time where everyone was talking about that. It seems a bit of AI. Everyone was talking about that. Now people are using, may that be watches or other things, to monitor what they need to monitor, what is important for them to monitor. And it's not as talked about still.
Well, I've actually gone kind of backwards in this. This is me personally.
With the watch, right?
With the watch, right? So I had Apple Watch for a long time. And I was getting all the notifications and I was getting all the health stuff, and it was fascinating me. And then I bought a Casio.
Old school.
So I'm wearing a Casio watch. It's quite a nice Casio watch. I think it costs 200 euros maybe. So it's like high end for a Casio. But it doesn't. It's
not smart.
It's not smart. It has no internet connectivity. It tells me the time. And it sets itself from the radio signal. It's been around forever, and it charges itself up with solar, and I never have to think about it. And the only time I put my smartwatch on is at the gym. And then it's interesting. Did I get into the heart rate zone for long enough, etc.? Then it seemed worth it.
You have a specific use case for it, which
I like the health stuff. I don't want a thing that buzzes on my wrist all the time.
You mentioned already the need of thinking of energy efficiency, carbon footprint. That is something you think for 2025 will be quite important, not only for AI but in general for the internet.
Cloudflare publishes for every customer a carbon impact, how much carbon they've saved by using our service, because it's not, we're offloading their servers, and we can be extremely efficient, as we talk about in the Gen 12 announcement. We try to be more and more efficient over time. I think it's the carbon side of things is just one of those things that everybody needs to think about as part of how they build stuff. We have that. We have our green compute option, which is we'll only run your service in a data center with green power. And so there are options there.
Sure. And the future seems right there in terms of changes for what's coming. Well, this was great, John. And we have, in a nutshell, some predictions and some also summaries of what was 2024.
There you go.
So that's a wrap.
Invasion.
Exactly. Alien AGI, maybe that will mean a lot, according to Sam Altman. A lot in terms of changes in our humans' daily lives, but things are changing for sure.
All right, good talking to you. And
as Bob Dylan would say, times are changing.
They always are.
And happy holidays for everyone that are celebrating.
Yes, happy holidays, everybody, and happy new year.
Exactly, it's coming. That's a wrap.